This is Dan Bolen, and I'm the host of the podcast, The Courage to Be Courageous, where people come from all over the world to be able to use courage to get through their fear. And I want to encourage all of you to tune into this podcast today because I think this is an outstanding podcast that we are doing. I decided to do this on video because I think this has such a interesting story about this is really about the allies in our community. And this podcast today is going to be about our wonderful allies that we have for our community today. And with that in mind, I have a gentleman that I'd like to introduce you to, Steve Peterson, who has actually developed a website called Bursting Through. And it is a fantastic opportunity for us to interview him. He's going to tell us while the allies are supporting our community and the things that we can do. And I think there's going to be some incredible things we're going to talk about this morning. So, Steve, welcome to my podcast.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you today. Yeah. Yes. Bursting Through is the storytelling movement for allies and the queer community. Yeah.
I think that's a powerful thing as well.
Yeah.
One of the things we're going to talk about, I would have the opportunity to review Steve's website and some of the things they're doing, the magazine that he writes, and some powerful stories that we're going to share about the community today. But before we start, I want to read a little bit about, let's do this. Let's find out a little bit more about Steve's life, how he got into Bursting Through, and then we'll come back and talk about Bursting Through because we want to make a real good focus on Bursting Through for our allies in the community today. So, Steve, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you were raised and you were growing up, and tell us the things that you knew that you were different, but it was sometimes difficult for you to really define who you were.
Yeah. So, I grew up in rural Iowa, in southwest Iowa, a little town called Audubon. It is smack dab in the middle between Des Moines, Iowa and Omaha, Nebraska, off of I-80 and Highway 71. And, I'm one of five. I have three sisters and a brother. Had a pretty, rural Midwestern, late 70s or 80s upbringing. I know that one of the things I've talked about previous to recording this is that you've had the conversation and asked the question. It's like, well, when did you realize you were different? And and like, even when did you realize you were gay? And that's such an interesting question. And I know that so many people answer it so easily, because obviously it's a question you look back on, like most of your life. But it's like, for me, it's like, I suppose at some level I always do that. I was different, but to me it was the norm and I didn't know anything else. I just, was who I was. Now, that didn't mean it didn't come with difficulties. Like at some point, in my junior high age, it's like, I was identified, as from my friend group. And, the other boys in school, they had decided that I was the gay kid. I was the fag. I was the, kid that they weren't going to, hang out with anymore and didn't want to, have part of their social group. And those were always curious things.
You didn't know you were gay at that time, though, right?
No.
Yeah.
And, when you look back, again, it's like looking back, it's like, I've written about this a little bit. It's like, I didn't even know what that word meant. And when I really look back on it, it's like, I'm pretty sure I had to ask somebody like, well, what does that mean? But also it's like, I didn't even know how they knew that, that there was, that people were gay, that some men liked men. It's like, I don't know how other people in my small town knew that because I didn't know that. Now, I'm also not saying that it's like, I can look back on it and know that it's like, well, I know. I mean, yes, I watched The Love Boat, and I wasn't interested in looking at the, the pretty women. But it's like, but I certainly loved when there was a pool shot of a nice looking man, lounging around the pool or something like that, or But I don't have this defining moment. It's like so many gay men of my generation are like, oh, and from the part of the country I'm at, we'll say it's like, oh, well, the Dukes of Hazzard or Tom Selleck in Magnum PI or something like that. And I don't have one of those like defining moments. To me, it was a journey. And did I know I was different? Sure. But I was who I was. And until other people sort of pointed it out, I didn't realize that was a problem.
And I think, Steve, you were telling me that you lost all your friends because you were, in their mind, gay, a faggot, whatever.
Yeah.
And you lost your friends, and through junior high and even into high school, you lost these friends that didn't want to hang out with you because they, in their mind, assumed you were gay and not to be able to be dealt with. And of course, this is in Iowa.
Yeah.
This is an area that is farming. But tell us about your best friend, Kyle. Tell us, because I think this is real critical that we understand who Kyle was and how his life turned out and your life turned out. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I think what you're meaning to ask about is that we talked a little bit when we spoke the other day about my friend Kurt.
Oh, Kurt, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's the wrong.
That's okay.
Kurt.
That's wrong K.
Wrong K.
So I was telling you a little bit about. So again, when you look back on things, it's like I had, a great friend in high school. Same was Kurt, and and him and I hung out a lot, and did normal things like anybody did in rural Iowa. Did a lot of beer drinking and going out on the weekends and beer drinking, and we're both involved in chorus and show choir in school, but also had other outside interests. Like he was a wrestler and he was a farm kid, and I was a town kid. But it's like we're really good friends and have this great that defining moment, or remember that defining moment just disintegrated. I do remember that again, and I had experienced this before, a few years before, with all of my male friends. It was like he decided he hated me and wanted nothing to do with me, and that there was a lot of incidents there. Even it's like we were on a chorus trip, and I remember him like following me around the amusement park that we were at. Calling me names, and I mean the names weren't particularly brutal at the time. It's like he called me like adamant, and just was like like these really kind of mean things. And then one night, I don't know, we were probably juniors in high school, sophomores or juniors. It's like he ended up beating the crap out of me in the town park. And I don't remember the entire night. I'm sure that if I recall right, it's like we had been together earlier. There had been some tension, something happened, but it's like I was, walking home to the town square park, and he found me. He came up and he beat the crap out of me. He's like, broke my glasses. I was a scrawny little kid. He was more of a beefy farm guy that was on the wrestling team and stuff like that.
And you guys have been good. You had been good friends.
We had been very good friends. This wasn't somebody that was in the camp. There were many boys in the camp that I was never friends with that if I walked down the hall would say fag or, all these things. But it's like he wasn't in that camp. He was, he was also in chorus and show choir and swing choir and stuff with me. It's like we were friends. And, and it was obviously that was, a difficult thing. But again, it's like you're teenagers, resilient. I didn't spend a lot of, if I remember right, it was very hurtful, but I didn't spend a lot of time, diving into my feelings and all of these things. It's like, I remember my parents were incredibly upset because I just got a new pair of glasses and they were broken and they were expensive and they should have been upset and they wanted his parents to pay for them and, things like this. But, but then, it's like life has a way of just happening. And years later, right? So I'm living in New York City at this point. Social media becomes a thing. I was like late to Facebook very intentionally, but I got on Facebook and started connecting with all these, a lot of people I went to high school with. And Kurt and I connected on Facebook. And then he reached out and we had a private conversation where he shared with me several things that it's like, first of all, he had come out at some point, post high school, of course, he'd come out as gay. Mm-hmm. And wanted to, and not wanted to, he did, apologize for that night and that fight, that we had, in the park and how that happened. And he always felt bad about that. And in hindsight, he could look at it, and I'm not trying to speak for him, that he could look at it as it's like, there was a lot of tension between us that neither of us understood. I mean, like physical attraction, probably chemical, a lot of chemical things going on that neither one of us understood, or both of us knew this wasn't something that was supposed to be happening with another boy.
And I'm going to share something here because obviously Kurt had incredible homophobia, and he knew he was different, wasn't accepted by his family. He hated who he was, in a sense. That would be my take. And the only way he knew to do with it is, rather than deal with who he was putting his hurt and shame of himself on top of you. And I think that's where it ended up.
Yeah, and I mean,
with that.
I think we can look at it that way in a very enlightened way all these years later. What I can say is, like, two rural Iowa teenage boys, it's like in 1984, 1985, whatever it was, it's like that wasn't necessarily, I wasn't a fighter and I wasn't somebody who was physical. I never was, but that also wasn't necessarily an uncommon way of dealing with conflict. Physical
and I'll make a comment on this, because I want to move on with another subject here. It's sad because when somebody doesn't deal with who they are, as I've said on my podcast previously, they'll usually end up in addicting on something to deal with the pain. He has now dealt with, and I'm very proud he's sober, but he's been using drugs and addicting to drugs. And that's how he dealt with it. And that, what is encouraging is he's now in remission right now.
Yeah.
But it's damaging.
What's kind of cool is that day that he reached out via Facebook, and we had that reconciliation, that moment where it's like he said that he had come out as gay and understood more of what had happened. And of course, it's like we were teenagers, and what's been very, very cool for me, and I hope for him, is that since that day we've never lost track of each other again, and we both took very different journeys and very different ways of dealing with and you and I have talked about this, but dealing with the shame, the fear and shame of being gay. And that's just an experience that every gay man goes through. It's like stage one of being a gay man is fear and shame. And everyone deals with it differently. It's like what I did was, it's like I kind of dove into a career and had a very successful path. It was very driven that way. But I've known a lot of gay men who also, it's like their fear and shame drove them into like a different world. And it's I did my fair share of drinking, but I was never addicted, right? It never went further than like beer or whatever. But it's like, a lot of gay men, and it's like, and when we talked about specifically, this friend of mine, it's like, for various different reasons, of course, it's like, he struggled with addiction and all these years later, again, it's like, could not be prouder of the fact that it's like, I know he's been sober for over 2.5 years, and it's
good.
Tough.
It's a good thing that's happening. Yes. He's, and I wish the very best for him. And I know you do too, as well.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about
it's like, I love that man. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about your career. You got your Bachelor's of Science degree in Iowa. Tell us a little bit about that and give us a little history of how you ended up in Manhattan, New York.
Yeah, so I went to Iowa State. I studied fashion merchandising. That was very intentional. When I was in school, I started working for a local department store. as a part-time job. I soon found out, and they soon found out, that I was really good at visual merchandising, and I quickly became part of like the visual merchandising team at the store. That led to, this was all while I was in college. It's like led to me like really being kind of a big part of their visual merchandising team, meaning like I was really connected with the corporate director. You know, it was a small little family-owned corporation, but there were like 20, 25 stores at the time. And you know, during the summer, they would, you know, tap me to, like, I spent one summer in Wichita, Kansas, because they were building a new store, you know, helping them open the new store, you know, as kind of a surrogate visual merchandising manager until they got that team down there running, and all of these things that I kind of was able to, you know, kind of early on, you know, I really found it's like what I was really, really good at and had this talent for. So, post Iowa State, it's like, you know, I dove into a career that had already pretty much, you know, been fairly established. Like the company I was working for was growing rapidly, and they like, you know, again, it's like we're going into Kansas City, and it's like, you know, I went to Kansas City, Missouri, moved to Kansas City, Missouri with them to open up, you know, a beautiful brand new store, and you know, as they kept growing, and then retail and the fashion world was very, very volatile toward in the 90s. And it's like that was about the time like a lot of like mergers and acquisitions and bankruptcy started to happen. They went bankrupt. I started working for another department store that was local. Inevitably, they went through multiple mergers. I ended up as the director of visual merchandising for one of their divisions up in Minnesota. And at that time, we were part of Saks Inc. So I was divisional vice president of visual merchandising for a division of Saks Inc. By the time I was under 30 at that point.
Oh,
and
my.
so I, you know, my career took me all around the Midwest. And when we talk about like the courage to change, it's like I every 2 years there for a while, it's like I was in another location because the company were changing and growing fast, and people were buying each other up, and it often worked to my advantage. And also, I got laid off several times, so sometimes it didn't work to my advantage. But you know, it's like there for a while, every 2 years, and I was still in the Midwest at this point, you know, and I was living around the Midwest. Like I lived places like Green Bay, Wisconsin, and Dubuque, Iowa, and I lived in Omaha, Nebraska a couple times. I lived in the Twin Cities a couple times, and then inevitably, you know, after one like big merger and acquisition that eliminated my job, I, you know, kind of took a pause and went back to Des Moines for a little while. And, you know, did like worked in some small businesses and things, and then got back into the industry and took a position out in Philadelphia, actually, with a division of May Company that no longer exists anymore called Hex Drawbridges. And I, you know, was headquartered in Philadelphia, and I was, you know, all of Pennsylvania and Delaware, and spent a lot of time in Baltimore and the Washington, D.C. area, and Philadelphia and all that stuff. And then became another huge merger where Macy's department store bought Macy's department store. There was a lot of turmoil through that, but inevitably after about a year and a half, I ended up at Macy's Merchandising Group in Manhattan, which is the private brand division of Macy's, responsible for designing, manufacturing, and marketing all private brands sold at Macy's. So, like if you've ever worn a, you know, INC sweater, an Ink sweater, or
Martha Stewart was another one. Yeah,
bought Martha Stewart collection, and my position was really created at a time where they had went in to had signed this contract with Martha Stewart, and we're in the process of launching her collection, the Martha Stewart collection, and I think it was launched in 600 stores in 3 different departments: through family business, textiles, food prep, and deck housewares, you know, simultaneously, and 600 stores, and that was huge. And so it's like that led to this really cool career in Manhattan with private brands, and my career previously had really kind of set me up for that. I had done a lot of work with other companies when they were trying to get private brands off the ground. So it's like it was a really cool experience to be there and kind of live this like Manhattan lifestyle. So it's like, you know, my career and my talents and my ability to accept what came for me, and then also like power through the very difficult times, the layoffs, did pay off in that way. So that was really cool. And that all kind of wrapped up in 2016 when online became so much more of a,
yes,
something that every corporation had to deal with in a major way. And what I did, in the world of visual merchandising, branded environments, and store planning and all that was creating experiences for the, in-store experiences, and
right.
for the consumer to go in store. And when companies shift their focus, then you're not going to spend as much time.
Amazon is a good example. Online shopping, Amazon, and that actually hurt a lot of the brick and mortar stores because they can order it on Amazon. So I understand that. Let's talk a little bit about, I want to know a little bit about more bursting forth, and then I want to come back to that because I am so appreciative and such a, in some ways, Steve is doing something for the heterosexual community that in my mind has never been done. He has created a website for heterosexual allies in our community. It's called Bursting Forth, and I want to spend some time.
It's bursting through. It's bursting through.
That's correct. Mm-hmm. Well, I was coming forth with bursting through.
Yes, I appreciate that. But before we go much further, bursting through.
Bursting through. And I want to read something because I did some research on this, and I was so taken back by the work that Steve is doing for the community, the allies. And we all need allies in our community. We cannot accomplish what we do without allies. Here's what it says on his website. Bursting Through is a social justice storytelling movement for the queer community and its allies. Stories are the most powerful change agent we have to open hearts and minds. Bursting Through collects, organizes, and distributes queer, straight stories via multiple avenues, primarily our quarterly digital magazine Connections. These stories of connection, allyship awareness, and our breakthrough move us closer to sustainable equality and safety for the queer community. Joining Bursting Through movement to add your story to our life-changing library. And that I thought was really a powerful comment there.
Yeah.
Would you like to add anything that to Steve? I mean,
I would say thank you so much for reading that. Yeah, Bursting Through is the social change storytelling movement for allies in the queer community. And Bursting Through's ultimate mission is sustainable safety and equality for the queer community. And the really important thing, and there's a lot of important things, there's a lot of layers to everything all of us do, but it's like when I started Bursting Through, started as a storytelling movement, and it's a media company with multiple media channels to share the stories and to share information. Like for instance, it's like I recently launched Bursting Through online community on Substack, and that's a really important place for us to come together as a community and be more interactive. And we can get more to that later. But at the end of the day, when we talk about allies in the queer community, allies and the queer community, we are the majority. Allies are people self-identify as allies are 55% of the adult population in the United States. And then in the queer world population is like 7.1% of the adult population in the United States identify as queer. So, math is never my strong point, but that's 62.1%. And so we are the majority. The people who are part of the queer community, plus those who love and support them, are the majority. And a lot of what Bursting Through talks about is that it's like that is a fact. So let's go from there. That 62% is a fact. So let's go from there. Why let's ask ourselves some questions. It's like, first question is like if we're the majority, why are our voices not being heard, and why is the why is just blatant lies and about the queer community and hate directed towards the queer community so much more visible and so much more active than we are if we're the majority? And one of the ways Bursting Through has answered that is because hate is organized. And has been grassroots, for a long time. And, I published something in November that talked about this, that, in 2000 and I might be misquoting these numbers, but something like 2016, there were 11 LGBTQ hate groups in the country that raised about $11 million. 11? And in 2020, there were 11 in 2020. Now there are 50 some, and they raise over $300 million a year.
For hate groups against the queer community?
Yes.
Oh my! Oh, how sad. We as the allies, and we as a queer community, we have to have a voice about this. And we're having a voice right now about it.
We're having a voice right now, but it's like it's both. It's like you're physically shocked by this, and that's a huge part of why Bursting Through exists, to say it's like, hey, this is what's going on. It's not to put gloom and doom on everything, because that's not what it's about. What it's about saying is that it's like, look, we can sit around and talk about how, the queer, it's like, look at everything that's happened in the past several years, but like over the last decade, towards, and the hate and the legislation and the action and the violence and all of these things towards the queer community. And then, it's like, if you live in, me as leader of the movement says, okay, well, why is that? And how can I communicate why that is to our, members, so we can put action to that and do something about it? And what I found, and the reality is that it's like, hate is organized at a grassroots level. And what we tend to do, more enlightened people, or people who are allies or lead with love more than hate, what we tend to do is believe that silent love and silent support and just being a good person is going to get us the results that we want to. Because a lot of us,
but it does not have a voice.
But it doesn't, and
it doesn't have a voice.
Yeah, a lot of. I mean, it's like, that's kind of the way, society has shaped that too. It's like, well, if you're a good person, good will win. Love always wins. Love over hate. And I'm not being like flippant of those things. I love all of those things, but it's like, what Bursting Through is saying is, thank you for the love and support. That is fantastic. Love and support plus action is what we need. But because also too, it's like, we tend to, and when I say we, allies in the queer community, we tend to lean into thinking that these larger, well-organized or established organizations are going to do this work. Meaning, we've got like, like HRC and all these places like that, and GLAAD and all these pride organizations and all these centers that are doing this amazing work for the community. And I'm not saying they're not doing amazing work, but they're up here fighting, on a very big stage. And you know what? Hate has been down here building at a grassroots level. And what they did was they took over all these school boards, and they've got book bans, and they've got all of these things that are happening, needs to be counteracted at a grassroots level. And that's where Bursting Through comes in. Right.
I want to share something with you, because I have many allied friends in the community here, and they understand the struggles that the queer community goes through, but many of them don't know what to do. How can I have a voice? And I think this is what's so incredible about Bursting Through's website. You've given a website for the allies. And I want to read a letter that Steve wrote that was in the Des Moines, Iowa Registry on August 12th, 2021. And I think this kind of really capitalizes and drives home the point of what bursting through is about. And I'd like my listeners to hear this. This is written by Steve. I am a gay man, identify as gay, and use the word queer when talking about my community because it is the most inclusive word. If you are straight, you don't have to know me. You could exclude me from your special social group. You could refuse to hire me or keep me in the closet at work. You could not invite me to family functions to ensure no one is uncomfortable. All of these things are simple to do, and unless you told someone, they would never know or even think about it. Now, this goes back to 2021, said 5.6. I think you said 7.1, the percentage of people identified as gay. So that's
when the new census. Yeah, when the new census came out, it said 7.1. 5.6 was before that.
Yeah, 7.1 of the adults identify as queer. Here's the key point for our listeners. An average of 55 of heterosexual adults identify themselves as allies. Yet queer people are nearly 4 times as likely to be victims of violent crime than straight community. I am far from good with numbers, but I don't think this adds up. If you're so aligned and involved, why do more than 1.8 million queer youths in the U.S. similarly suffer suicide each year? Why do queer teens make 40% of the homeless youth population? Why do 1 in 5 queer adult workers report being told they should dress in a more feminine or masculine manner? Why is leadership apathy the top reason queer professionals don't report the negative workplace comments about queer people? I sincerely believe it's because the queer community straight allies do not know. I refuse to believe straight allies don't care and are just giving lip service to this issue. I truly believe this compassionate population works to do right by their queer loved ones, but simply do not fully realize the challenges those loved ones face or how to actually help. They don't realize that loving someone who is queer is not enough. The love and acceptance our allies give is great, necessary, and appreciated, but it is just the beginning. Many allies view it as the end. Like it or not, this country is fighting a cultural war. The lens I see through is the queer-straight relationship because my life journey has given me a unique perspective of this country and its people. I grew up in rural Iowa, attended Iowa State, and lived all around the Midwest and on both coasts. I am proud to say I have friends who range from those who identify as redneck to identifying as woke and everywhere in between. I strongly believe the queer community has more allies than not. Not there are some more good people and bad. That there are more good people and bad. But right now, the bad people are better organized and louder.
Mm-hmm.
If you're straight ally to the queer community, it's time for you to come out. You can no longer be passive. You're either actively homophobic, passionately homophobic, or fighting homophobia. It's not incredibly complex, and the choice is yours.
Yeah.
Such a powerful comment. I think that really encompasses why Bursting Through came out.
Yeah.
I think that really encompasses it. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. That was when Bursting Through launched, after several years of development. That was the piece I had written to launch Bursting Through, and it got picked up as an opinion piece, like you said, in the Des Moines Register, and it, published on a few other places. And but it's really interesting because I don't go back and read a whole lot, and like sitting here listening to you read it, it's like I got a little emotional, and it's still very very true. And that's the reason that Bursting Through exists. Now, what was so powerful about when that piece published, and again, this was when Bursting Through was first coming onto the scene. And so it's like, this is what I believe. This is what I believe. And this is why I've created this company. And this is why I've created this movement. And this is all these things. And when that piece got published, I did have people reach out to me, right? And say, wow, I identify as an ally. You're absolutely right. I don't know what to do. What do I do? Well, what do I do then? And I had people saying, a lot of educators reach out saying, it's like, I'm a teacher. What do I do? I can't, it's like, I'm not in the business of wanting to lose my job, and I'm not trying to fight the school board or the president, but I also want people to know and kids to know that I'm a safe place for them, and not just queer kids. I mean, we live in a world now where it's like, there could be an elementary school kid that is being raised by same-sex parents. Mm-hmm. So the hate isn't just about the kid that might be discovering that they are not heterosexual. There's also heterosexual kids sitting in a classroom who not only just maybe have a gay relative, but it's like their dads or moms might be.
Yes.
Gay.
Yes.
So this, I mean, this was all part of like what got it going and led to, action. And what Bursting Through followed it up with was 10 easy activisms. And easy activisms are just living your lives and your values every single day of your life. It's about deconstructing the word activism to make it too difficult. It's putting action to your values. If you do support and love, the queer community, somebody who's LGBTQ, then you act like that every day, not just when you vote. Right? It's like, acting like it every day is really simple. It's a matter of like, knowing where to spend your money. And it's not that complicated to know. And Bursting Through gives us this information. It's like, look, it's well documented that, Chick-fil-A has in the past given a lot of money to, anti-LGBTQ politicians, and with the express intent of having anti-queer legislation passed. Now, the company supposedly stopped that act, but the owner still continues to give tons of money to these groups. So, if you have a choice, if you live in a community, if you live in a city that's big enough to have a Chick-fil-A, they're going to have other chicken fast food options. So choose that. Home Depot gives a lot of money to anti-queer legislation. If you have a choice between Home Depot and Lowe's, go to Lowe's. If you have a choice between Hobby Lobby and Michael's, go to Michael's. These are simple, easy activism ways. And this isn't like I've had some people. I was on another podcast where it's like they wanted to turn that into like counterculture or cancel culture or something like that. It's like, people making a choice about where they spend their money is not cancel culture. That's just living your values. Cancel culture is, a protest or a boycott. Nobody's saying that. Bursting Through is saying, live your values, at home and on vacation. It's like, make a choice of where you go on vacation and know where you're spending your money, and knowing where that's a lot of money when you go on vacation. If you go on vacation to, Florida or Texas or something, and these are, states that are very actively, taking that,
right.
Those tax dollars from, from your vacation, and again, it's like you need to make the choices that you need to make as an ally, but you need to be informed and aware, and these easy activisms, like I said, the one I'm focusing on right now is knowing where to spend your money, but it's also as simple as like speaking out. Of course, always being safe when you speak out, but it's like I've used this example a lot of times where it's like, look, let's just say, you're a young professional and you're, late 20s, and every holiday, you look forward to seeing your favorite cousin who's gay, and you have a great time at every Thanksgiving, and it's your favorite cousin, and your friends outside of just family functions and all of this stuff, but you spend all of Thanksgiving having a great time and, doing your own thing and connecting on such a great level. But then the following week, you have to go to a work happy hour and there's a bunch of people there who are saying horrible homophobic things or, homophobic jokes, or it's like, yeah, you need to speak up. It's like there's that's activism.
Have a voice.
And that's activism, and it's like, and that's where, the Substack, it's like, bursting through online comes in, because as great as the website is, and I love the keep mentioning, it's like Substack is a platform that's designed for us to be able to be interactive together, where the website is kind of one-sided, right? It's like people can go on and read, and they can reach out and contact me and all those things. But it's like when you're on Substack and part of the bursting through Substack, when I send something out, like every other Thursday is a new knowledge and power, right? Which talks about knowledge, that easy to understand knowledge for allies and the community. Lots of times within the community, we don't know it. I think about like the hate groups I was just talking about, and you as a very active member of the queer community were surprised by that. So, the information is for all of us. And, and Substack is where you can immediately comment and you can immediately come back. And there's a deeper piece of Substack too, where we go and are able to share our stories in a safe online community. Right?
I'm going to share something now. Give us the email Substack number. I mean, the website number from Substack.
So if you go to Substack, you can search Bursting Through, but the URL is Substack Steve Petersen, PETERSEN.com. And there's more than one Steve Petersen on Substack, so it's Bursting Through. And when you go to Substack, you can go in the search engine and search Bursting Through, and it'll come right up. The URL is stevepetersen.com. It's just the way Substack is set up.
And let's give your website though for Bursting Through again. I want my listeners to pay attention, write it down, and check out your website, because you're doing some amazing things for the ally community. And then I want to share a clothing thought with you after that. Yeah. So tell them about your website.
Okay, so the website is burstingthrough.gay. I'd love for everyone to go check out the website. But again, like I said, it's like where we're really building and connecting as a community, and where we can come together and have the different conversations that are interactive is on Substack. And so I encourage you to go to the website if you want to learn a little bit, about Bursting Through. But if you want to be an active ally and you want to be part of this conversation and the different conversation that Bursting Through is having, because we are having a different conversation. It's like Bursting Through is having the conversation that is about our shared humanity, but is not shying away from our differences. And then what do we do with that going forward? And how do we create the society that we want to live in? Because, the reality is this is about building a community, and Bursting Through is not a political organization. It's a storytelling movement. It's a community of people coming together. Do we talk about politics and the laws and stuff? Sometimes I have to, because we've decided in this country that my rights are tied to legislation. So sometimes we have to talk about that. But most of the time we're talking about our shared humanity and our differences, and how do we create the society we want to live in? And that will bubble up to the rest,
And I want to, one of the things I want to share with is this idea of a voice for the allies, the heterosexual allies. There's lots of things they can do to have a voice. There's certain organizations that I've interviewed, Trevor Project for the teens that are struggling right now. And they mentioned in Trevor Project that if they just have one single adult that supports who they are, they're 33% less chance of committing suicide. Outright International is another one I support that's fighting for gay rights worldwide. Our heterosexual allies can support them. They can go on their website. They can listen to stories. They can donate money to be able to help these organizations accomplish equality. And that's one I encourage our heterosexual allies to do. Another one is the SAGE group, of course, GLAD, PFLAG. There's so many groups that heterosexual allies can go to to be able to have a voice for the community and give support to the community. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you establishing this website, Bursting Through. If you look at Steve's T-shirt and little icon in the back, that's the Bursting Through icon. Yeah. And I thank you so much for spending that. And again, people will have the website. I will also put it in my notes. And thank you, Steve. Thank you so much for being a podcast. And congratulations for doing work for the heterosexual allies of our community. This was a great interview with you.
Yeah, I appreciate you, and thanks for inviting me. And I am honored to be included in the Courage to be Courageous world.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Steve. It's been my pleasure.
All right.
Take care, my friend.
Take care.
Bye-bye now.